Love doesn't ask permission to be born. It simply happens in the most unlikely places, in the most wounded hearts. This is the story of a woman condemned for loving outside the rules, of a man buried in his own solitude, and of a boy who became the bridge between two broken worlds. In a town where everyone knows everyone and secrets echo loudly, they discovered that redemption doesn't come from others' judgment, but from the courage to start over when no one else believes. Subscribe to the channel for heart-touching stories every day. The morning mist still clung to the town square when Marina crossed it for the first time. The boy slept soundly in her arms, his blonde head resting on her shoulder, oblivious to the sharp glances of the few women already setting up their stalls at the market. She felt each pair of eyes like fine needles piercing her tired skin. 3 days on the road, 3 nights without proper sleep, always alert, always running. Her swollen feet ached inside her worn espadrilles, but Marina couldn't stop, not now. Not when she'd finally found a place where no one knew her, or so she hoped. The little house Mrs. Aparecida had lent her was at the back of town, almost hidden between eucalyptus trees and a thin creek that sang softly. It was simple: 2 rooms, a plank floor, a small window overlooking a red dirt yard. But it had a door, it had a roof, it had silence. Marina laid the boy on the only bed, covered him with the faded blanket she'd carried with her, and stood there watching his sleeping face. Lucas, 3.5 years old, wheat-colored hair, brown eyes that seemed to understand more than they should. He was her blessing and her sin, her reason to keep going, and her constant reminder of the mistake everyone said she'd made. The woman with the forbidden child. Someone knew. Someone always knew. She pushed the thought away, rubbed her hands on her threadbare dress, and walked to the window. The yard was neglected, but it had potential. Space for vegetables, maybe chickens, honest work, a simple life. Maybe here she could just be Marina, not the mistress, not the sinner, not the outsider, just a woman trying to raise her son. But when she went to get water from the creek, she saw the stairs again. 2 men on the wooden bridge stopped their conversation as she passed. A woman crossed the street to avoid greeting her. The general store owner, as he sold her a piece of bacon and half a dozen eggs, barely met her eyes. Marina returned home with a heavy heart. Lucas had woken up and was playing with a smooth pebble he'd found on the floor. "Mom, is this our home now?" he asked, his thin voice full of hope. She knelt beside him, smoothing his messy hair. "Yes, my love, this is our home." But as she said it, a shadow crossed her chest. How many times had they said that? How many homes had they left behind? God, if I'm meant to rest, let it be here. I can't keep running anymore. The silent prayer rose like smoke, but she didn't know if anyone up there was still listening. The following week brought light rain and hard work. Marina washed clothes for 3 families in town, scrubbing fabrics at the stone sink until her hands were red and rough. The money was little, but it was enough for rice, beans, the warm milk Lucas drank before bed. He spent his mornings in the yard, playing with sticks and stones, inventing stories only he understood. Marina watched him from the window while wringing out clothes, her heart tight with gratitude for having him there, alive, smiling. It was on a cold, windy afternoon that everything changed. Marina was hanging sheets on the makeshift clothesline when she realized Lucas was no longer in the yard. Her heart leaped. "Lucas! Lucas!" She ran to the front of the house, her bare feet sinking into the wet earth. Then she saw him, running down the dirt road towards the cattle pasture, his little arms outstretched, trying to catch a yellow butterfly dancing in the wind. "Lucas, stop!" The butterfly was flying towards the barbed wire fence surrounding the neighboring property. Marina ran, terror rising in her throat, but someone got there first. A tall man, a dark hat obscuring part of his face, grabbed Lucas by the shoulders a few feet from the wire. The butterfly escaped, indifferent to the human drama. Lucas began to cry, more from fright than pain. Marina arrived, breathless, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The man was already lifting the boy into his arms, calming him with a deep, quiet voice. "Easy, little one. It's okay. See, the butterfly's gone now, but you're all in one piece." But also kindness, a kindness that seemed tired of having nowhere to land. He placed Lucas carefully into her arms, as if handing over something precious. He just wanted the butterfly. Kids are like that. "I live just down the road." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Marina." He looked at her for another second, not with the judgment of the others, but with something different. Recognition, perhaps, as if he knew what it was to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. Then he turned and walked back down the road, his heavy boots marking the wet ground. Marina stood frozen, holding Lucas, feeling the cold wind on her face. Something strange had happened in that moment, something she couldn't name. Lucas tugged at her dress. "Mom, he's nice." She kissed the top of his blonde head. "Yes, my love, I think so." But that night, lying in the narrow bed, Marina couldn't stop thinking about the farmer's gaze. There was sadness there, but there was also space, as if he knew what it was to be too alone for too long. And that, somehow, both scared and soothed her. The encounters began to happen without planning. Marina would go to the general store, and he'd be there buying wire. She'd fetch water from the creek, and he'd pass by on the road, calmly leading his horse. Lucas always waved when he saw him, and Tomas would return the wave, small, almost imperceptible. The town, however, wasn't blind. "Be careful with that woman," Marina overheard when she entered the store one morning. The voice belonged to Mrs. Isabel, who was speaking too loudly on purpose. "She arrived here without a husband, without family. Only God knows where she came from." Marina pretended not to hear. She picked up the bread, paid silently, and left with her head down. Lucas held her hand, confused by the tension in the air, but the whispers continued. At Sunday Mass, she felt heavy stares on her back. No one sat next to her. When the priest spoke of mercy, some women exchanged meaningful glances in her direction. Marina tightened her fingers around the worn rosary she carried in her purse. "I didn't choose this. I just loved." Was it wrong to love? The question had no answer, or it had too many. It was on a chilly afternoon that Thomas knocked on her door for the first time. Marina was mending one of Lucas's shirts when she heard the firm knocks. She opened the door to find the farmer standing there, holding a basket covered with a cotton cloth. "Brought you some eggs." "And fresh milk," he said, straight to the point. "The cow gave more than usual today." Marina was speechless. She accepted the basket with trembling hands. I don't know how to thank you." Thomas shook his head. "No need. Kids need to eat well." Lucas appeared behind his mother, his eyes shining at the sight of the farmer. "Hi, mister. Do you have butterflies at your house?" Thomas almost smiled. "Almost. I do. And I have a horse too. Maybe one day you can come see." Lucas looked at his mother, hopeful. Marina felt her heart clench. She couldn't let them get attached. She couldn't let anyone get too close. But when she looked at Thomas, at that face etched with loneliness and restrained kindness, something in her gave way. "Maybe," she said softly. Thomas touched the brim of his hat and left. That night, Marina made scrambled eggs and warm milk for Lucas. He ate with gusto, chattering non-stop about the horse he hadn't met yet. She listened, her heart torn between gratitude and fear. Gratitude because someone had finally treated them with kindness. Fear because kindness, in the past, always came with a price. But it was at the farmer's market the following week that the first blow fell. Marina was selling vegetables she'd grown in the backyard, small but green and fragrant lettuce. She was arranging the plants when she heard Mrs. Isabel's shrill voice. "Shameful, that's what it is. Thomas, a good man, mixing with people like that, barely got here and he's already got his eye on her." Marina felt her blood run cold. She looked around and saw several women whispering, their eyes fixed on her. Lucas tugged at her skirt. "Mom, why is that lady mad?" Marina swallowed her tears. "Let's go, sweetheart." She quickly gathered the vegetables, her hands trembling. But before she left, she heard another voice, deep, firm, cutting through the murmur, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." It was Thomas. He was standing at the entrance to the market, hat in hand, his gaze serious. Mrs. Isabel fell silent. Marina crossed the square with her head down, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't completely alone. Someone had stood up for her, and that changed everything. The days began to take on their own rhythm, as if time in the countryside flowed differently, slower, more attentive to small details. Marina would wake before sunrise, make weak coffee, and wake Lucas with kisses on his forehead. He'd stretch like a cat, his eyes still blurry with sleep but already smiling. Thomas started appearing more often. Never without a reason. He brought firewood when it rained, fixed the falling fence in the yard, taught Lucas how to whistle with a blade of grass. They were simple, practical gestures, but they carried something deeper. Marina noticed and pretended not to. One clear morning, he knocked on her door earlier than usual. "I need to fix a roof today," he said, looking up where loose shingles revealed damp patches. "If it doesn't rain before then, it should hold for a while longer." Marina followed his gaze. "I can't pay you right now, Thomas. I still owe Miss Aparecida for the month." He shook his head. "I'm not charging. I'm fixing." She stood there, arms crossed, battling shame and gratitude in equal measure. "Why?" she asked, her voice almost disappearing. "Why do you do this?" Thomas took a moment to answer. He took off his hat, ran a hand through his tangled hair. "Because I know what it's like to be alone, and I know what it's like to need help and have no one give it." Marina's eyes stung. She turned her face so he wouldn't see. "Thank you," she whispered. While Thomas worked on the roof, Lucas played in the yard with twigs, building what he called his castle. Marina was washing clothes in the basin, but her eyes would drift up now and then to watch the farmer. He worked in silence, focused, the muscles in his arms taut under his faded shirt. There was something comforting about his presence, something solid. When he finished, Thomas climbed down the makeshift ladder and wiped his forehead with his arm. "Done. It'll hold through the winter." Marina brought him a glass of cold water. He drank it slowly, in large gulps. "Stay for lunch," she said, before thinking twice. Thomas looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." He hesitated, but something in the way she spoke, firm, almost shy, made him nod. The lunch was simple: rice, beans, cooked squash. Marina didn't have much, but she set the table with care, using the only 3 plates she owned. Lucas sat next to Tomas, talking non-stop about the castle he'd built. "And it's going to have a drawbridge, and a tower, and a horse just like yours." Tomas listened attentively, asking questions as if he really cared. Marina watched it all from a distance, her heart aching with a strange emotion. When they finished, Tomas helped clear the plates. "You have a way with him," Marina said, drying her hands on her apron. "He's sharp, good kid." Marina looked out the window at Lucas, who was playing outside again. "He didn't have a father," she said, her voice low. "No name, no presence, just empty promises." Tomas was quiet. Then he said slowly, "Sometimes we think we need blood to be a father. But you don't, you just need to be there." Marina felt tears welling up, but she didn't let them fall. "Did you have children?" He shook his head, his gaze distant. "No, but I had a wife, and a whole future planned. The fever took her before we'd been married 3 years. Since then, it's just me and the work." Marina lightly touched his arm. A brief touch, but full of understanding. "I'm so sorry." Tomas nodded, put his hat back on. "Pain teaches us to recognize the pain of others. That's why I see you, Marina, and that's why I stay." He left without another word, but those words echoed in her chest for days. I see you, and that's why I stay. For the first time in a long time, Marina felt that maybe, just maybe, God hadn't given up on her. The weather changed quickly. The cold wind gave way to heavy rains, and the ground turned into sticky mud that clung to boots and worn-out shoes. Marina tried to keep the house dry, but the dampness seeped in through the cracks, bringing a chill that ached in her bones. It was on one of those nights that Lucas started coughing. At first, it was just a dry little cough. Then came the fever. Marina stayed up all night, wetting cloths in cool water and placing them on the boy's forehead. He whimpered softly, his small body trembling under the blanket. "Mom, I'm hot. I know, my love. It'll pass." It'll pass. But the fever wouldn't break. By morning, Lucas was worse. His lips were cracked, his skin pale, his breathing ragged. Marina felt panic rise. She had no money for a doctor, no medicine, nothing but her own trembling hands and a faith she no longer knew if it still worked. She wrapped Lucas in the blanket and ran out into the rain, her bare feet sinking into the mud. She didn't know exactly where she was going, only that she needed help. It was Tomas who found her. He was coming down the road on his horse when he saw the small figure running wildly, the bundle in her arms. He reined in the animal and jumped down. "Marina, what happened?" She could barely speak, the rain mixing with tears. "Lucas, fever. He's not getting better. I don't know what to do." Tomas didn't hesitate. He took the boy in his arms and mounted the horse, pulling Marina up behind him. "Hold on tight. I'll take you to Dr. Euclid." The ride was fast, but it felt like an eternity. Marina held Lucas against her chest, feeling the absurd heat of his little body. Tomas guided the horse steadily, the rain beating down hard on all of them. Dr. Euclid was an old man, with steady hands and an experienced gaze. He examined Lucas in silence, listened to his chest, looked at his throat, took his temperature. Bad flu, starting to turn into bronchitis. He needs rest, steam, and this syrup, he scribbled on a stained piece of paper, 3 times a day. Marina looked at the paper, then at the doctor. I can't pay right now." Tomas placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll pay. We'll figure it out later." The doctor looked between them, then nodded. "Take him home. Make steam with hot water and eucalyptus leaves. And pray. Young children need prayer too." He helped Marina light the stove, put water on to boil, and improvise steam with a sheet and a basin. Lucas coughed, but he was starting to breathe better. Marina sat by the bed, her trembling hands holding her son's warm little ones. "Thank you," she said to Tomas, without taking her eyes off Lucas. "Thank you for everything." Tomas pulled up a chair and sat on the other side of the bed. "I'll stay. You won't be alone tonight." She looked at him, surprised. "Tomas, you don't have to." "I know, but I'm staying." And he stayed, all night long. Tomas made steam, changed cool cloths, prepared tea. When Lucas whimpered, it was he who softly hummed an old lullaby he'd learned from his mother. Marina watched it all, her heart aching with a new, frightening emotion. For the first time, she wasn't alone in the trench. When dawn broke, Lucas was sleeping peacefully, his breathing lighter, the fever finally subsiding. Marina had fallen asleep in her chair, exhausted. Tomas covered her with the blanket, gently touched her head, a brief, almost paternal gesture, and left in silence. But before he went, he looked back one last time, and he knew, with a painful clarity, that he couldn't leave that house anymore without leaving his heart behind. Lucas got better gradually. The cough faded, color returned to his cheeks, his smile reappeared. Marina thanked God with each sunrise, kneeling by the bed, her eyes closed, her hands clasped. Tomas kept showing up. Sometimes he brought things, a piece of jerky, eggs, a bunch of bananas. Other times he just stopped by to see if everything was okay. Lucas would run to meet him as if it were the most important event of the day. "Tomas! Tomas! Come see my castle! It has a drawbridge now!" And Tomas would go. He always went. Marina watched the two of them from a distance, her chest tight. She knew this couldn't last. She knew that sooner or later the past would catch up to the present. It always did. It was on a day with weak sunshine that the news arrived. Marina was at the general store buying flour when she overheard a conversation between two women near the counter. They say her boy's father is looking for them. Someone sent word to town. "He's coming." Marina felt the ground disappear from beneath her feet. Her hand tightened on the crumpled bill she held. "Who sent word?" she asked, her voice coming out louder than she intended. The women turned, surprised. One of them, Donna Isabel, raised her chin with a superior air. "Ah, so it's true. She really ran off with the boy." Marina felt anger rise, but also fear. "He has no right to my son, none. Right or not, he's coming. And then we'll see who's who in this story." Marina left the store without buying anything. Her legs trembled, the world spun. She hurried back home, her heart pounding. He can't take Lucas. He can't. So fast. But when she opened it, it was Tomas. He looked at the bundle of clothes, at her frightened face, and understood everything. "You're going to run away again." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Marina lowered her eyes. "I don't have a choice. He's coming after me, and if he finds me..." "What did he do to you?" The question was low, but firm. Marina took a deep breath. He promised he'd leave his wife, that he'd acknowledge Lucas. But when he found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. Said it was my fault that I seduced him and his family. They have power, Tomas. They have money. If he wants to, he can take my son away from me. Tomas was silent for a long moment. Then he entered, closed the door behind him, and looked directly into her eyes. "Then marry me." Marina blinked, sure she'd misheard. "What?" "Marry me. Paperwork, efficient, the whole thing. If you're my wife, he can't do anything. Lucas will have my name. He'll have protection." Marina shook her head, her eyes wide. "Tomas, you can't. This is crazy. It's sensible. It's the only way out. But you don't love me. You don't even know me." Tomas took a step forward. His voice was low but clear as day. "I know enough. I know you're a good mother, that you're a hard worker, that you're brave. And I know that when I look at you, I see someone who deserves to rest. So let me be that rest, Marina. Let me stay." The tears finally fell. Marina covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Lucas came and hugged her leg. "Mom, don't cry. Tomas is nice. He can stay with us." Tomas knelt in front of the boy. "Can I, Lucas?" The boy nodded vigorously. "Yes, can you be my dad?" Tomas looked at Marina, and she, amidst the tears, the fear, and the exhaustion of so many years on the run, nodded too. Yes. The wedding was set for 3 days later. The minister, a kind man named Father Anselmo, who had known Tomas since he was a boy, agreed to perform the ceremony without many questions. He only asked Marina to confess, and she went, trembling, to carry her sins to the dark confessional. "I loved wrongly, Father, but I can't regret Lucas." The priest was silent for a moment. "God doesn't condemn love, my daughter. He condemns selfishness, cruelty. You weren't cruel, just human. Go in peace." Marina left the church feeling lighter. But as she crossed the town square, she felt eyes on her. She heard whispers, "Shotgun wedding. Bet she's pregnant again. Poor Tomas, he's taking on someone else's problems." She quickened her pace, holding Lucas's hand. But a voice stopped her. "Marina, wait." It was Mrs. Applegate, the lady who had lent her the house. Marina turned, her heart racing. The elderly lady approached, leaning on her cane. "Is it true? You're marrying Tomas?" Marina nodded, prepared for a scolding. But Mrs. Applegate smiled, a tired smile but sincere. "Then you're smarter than I thought. That man needs someone, and you deserve someone who will stay." With that, the woman turned and left, leaving Marina stunned. But not everyone thought that way. The eve of the wedding, a group of women led by Mrs. Henderson went to Tomas's house. Marina and Lucas were there, helping to pack the few belongings they would take. They heard the voices before they saw the people. "Tomas, open this door. We need to talk to you." Tomas came out, his face grim. Marina stood on the threshold, Lucas clinging to her skirt. Mrs. Henderson pointed her finger at him. "You're making a mistake, Tomas. This woman is a fugitive. The boy's father is coming. There's going to be a scandal. Do you want that?" Tomas crossed his arms. "What I want is to live my life in peace and to marry whom I choose." "But she's no good." "Everyone knows it." Tomas's voice cut the air like a whip. "Everyone knows what, Isabel? Tell me. Did you see her do anything wrong? Did you see her steal, lie, abuse her son? Or are you just repeating gossip?" Mrs. Henderson opened and closed her mouth. Tomas continued, his voice lower but no less firm. "Marina works. She takes care of her son. She goes to church. She doesn't bother anyone. And if you can't see that, the problem isn't hers. It's yours." He went back inside and closed the door in their faces. Inside the house, Marina stood in the middle of the room, her hands trembling. Tomas came to her and took her shoulders. "Don't listen to them. It's not worth it." Marina shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "They won't stop, Tomas. They never stop. I'm the wrong woman. The shame. You'll carry this for the rest of your life if you marry me." Tomas cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "I've carried loneliness for years, Marina, and that hurts more, much more. So let me trade. Let me carry you. Let me carry him." He looked at Lucas, who watched everything with wide eyes. "Let me have a family again." Marina sobbed against his chest, and Tomas held her, firm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That night, Marina tucked Lucas into the makeshift bed and watched his sleeping face. "Tomorrow everything changes, my love. Tomorrow you'll have a real father." Lucas murmured something in his sleep, snuggling deeper into the pillow. Marina went out and found Tomas sitting on the porch, looking at the stars. She sat beside him. They stayed like that, in silence, listening to the crickets and the cold wind. "Are you sure?" she asked, softly. "I am." "And you?" Marina looked at her calloused hands, her broken fingernails from washing clothes. "I'm scared, but I'm sure too." Tomas took her hand. He squeezed it lightly. "Then it's decided. Tomorrow we start again, the three of us." And for the first time in a long time, Marina let her heart believe that new beginnings were possible. The day dawned clear. Marina woke up with Lucas jumping on top of her, his eyes shining with excitement. "Mom! Mom! Today's the day!" "You're getting married," she smiled, brushing the messy hair from the boy's face. "Yes, my love." "And I'm going to have a dad?" "Yes." Lucas shouted with joy and ran out into the yard. Marina got up slowly, her heart beating fast. She put on the only nice dress she had, light blue, simple but clean. She pinned her hair into a low bun. There were no flowers, no veil, but there was dignity. Mrs. Applegate appeared at the door with a small bunch of wild daisies. "Every bride needs flowers," she said with a wry smile. Marina accepted them, her eyes welling up. "Thank you." The elderly lady squeezed her hand. "You'll be happy, child. You deserve it." He was serious, focused, as if understanding the importance of the moment. Tomas waited at the altar, standing tall, his shirt clean, hat in hand. When he saw Marina, something shifted in his expression. The hardness softened. Father Anselmo conducted the ceremony with simplicity. The words were old, familiar, but they had never meant so much to Marina. "Tomas, do you take Marina as your wife, to love and cherish in joy and sorrow, in sickness and in health?" "I do." "Marina, do you take Tomas as your husband, to love and cherish in joy and sorrow, in sickness and in health. Marina looked at Tomas. She saw not just a man, but a safe harbor, a place where she could finally stop running. I do. They didn't have rings, but Tomas held her hands as if they were made of glass and said softly, "Just for her, you're safe now. I promise." Marina felt tears stream down her face, but not from pain, from relief. Lucas tugged at the hem of his mother's dress. "Mom, is he my dad now?" Tomas knelt before the boy. "I am now, Lucas. If you want me to be, I want you to be." And Lucas hugged Tomas so tightly, the rancher almost lost his balance. When he stood up, his eyes were red. They left the chapel under divided gazes. Some offered congratulations, others turned away. But Marina didn't care. For the first time, she wasn't alone. They returned to Tomas's house, now their house. It was bigger than the little place they had borrowed, with 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a porch where you could watch the sunset. Lucas ran through it all, exploring every corner, shouting with joy. Marina stood in the living room, feeling the weight of the moment. Tomas came up behind her, placing a light hand on her shoulder. "Welcome. This house needed some life." Marina turned to him, her eyes shining. "Thank you for everything." He shook his head. "No need to thank me. We're family now." Family. The word echoed in her chest like a bell. Family. That night, Marina made a simple dinner. Rice, beans, stewed chicken. The 3 of them ate together at the kitchen table, Lucas chattering non-stop about his new room, about the horse, about everything. Tomas listened, responded, and occasionally laughed, a low chuckle as if he'd almost forgotten the sound of his own laughter. After Lucas fell asleep, Marina and Tomas sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of the night. "Scared?" he asked. "Of what?" "Of what's coming." He could still show up. Marina took a deep breath. "I am. But for the first time, I'm not alone in my fear." Tomas took her hand. "And you never will be again." They sat like that for a long time, under the stars, feeling the weight and the promise of this new beginning. The peace lasted exactly 5 days. Marina was at the farmer's market, buying vegetables, when the murmuring started. She looked towards the entrance of the town square and felt her blood run cold. A man was stepping down from a horse-drawn carriage, dark suit, wide-brimmed hat, an arrogant posture. Behind him, 2 men, henchmen by the look of them, him, Rodrigo, Lucas's father. Marina dropped the vegetables and ran. She had to get home. She had to protect Lucas. But his voice reached her first. "Marina, no use running. I've come for what's mine." She stopped, turned around slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Rodrigo approached, a cold, calculating smile on his face. "Thought you could hide forever? My family has resources, Marina. I found you. You have no right to my son," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Our son, and I do have rights. I'm his father." "Father?" Marina took a step forward, anger overriding her fear. "You disappeared. You said I was a liar. You called me a gold digger. You're no father to anyone." The entire square fell silent, watching. Mrs. Isabel and her friends whispered excitedly. Others watched in silence, undecided. Rodrigo shrugged. "Mistakes happen. Now I want to fix things. I want to take my son. He's not yours, he's mine, and now he has a real father. This washed-up rancher?" Rodrigo laughed cruelly. "He'll get tired of you, Marina, just like I did." That's when Tomas appeared. He was coming down the road, his steps firm, his face grim. Lucas was with him, holding his hand. Rodrigo looked at the boy, and Marina saw something change in his expression. Calculation, self-interest. "It's him, isn't it? My son." Tomas stopped in front of Marina, putting himself between them. "You're not touching him." Rodrigo smiled. "And who are you to decide? Some stranger? Someone she seduced for protection?" Tomas didn't take the bait. He kept his voice low, dangerous. I'm her husband, and Lucas's father in name and in life. You have no claim here. I have blood. I have legal rights. Legal rights? Father Anselmo's voice cut through the air. He was walking into the square, leaning on his cane. You abandoned this woman when she was pregnant, denied your child, and now you come demanding rights? Rodrigo glared at the priest, annoyed. This is none of the church's business. It's a matter of justice, and God sees everything, son. Don't be mistaken. Mrs. Aparecida also approached, followed by Dr. Euclides. One by one, some of the townsfolk, those who had seen Marina work, care for her son, suffer in silence, began to side with her. Rodrigo realized he was losing ground. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and menacing. I'll be back with a lawyer, I'll be back with a judge, and I'm taking this boy. He turned back to the carriage, but before climbing in, he looked directly at Marina. You'll pay for this. The carriage pulled away, kicking up dust. Marina collapsed into Tomas's arms, trembling. Lucas began to cry, frightened. Tomas held them both, firm as a rock. He won't take you, he whispered in Marina's ear. I swear to God he won't. When Rodrigo returned a week later, he was met by the Justice of the Peace with an official document. Lucas was legally Tom's son, and Marina, his wife, was protected by law. Rodrigo snarled, threatened to sue, but he knew he'd lost. He knew he couldn't compete with a man who stayed, who took responsibility, who loved. He left without looking back. And Marina, for the first time, felt she could breathe deep without fear of tomorrow. The following months brought gentle but profound changes. Lucas grew. He started calling Tom Dad without hesitation, without reservations. He ran through the fields, helped feed the chickens, learned to plant beans. At night, he'd sit on Tom's lap on the porch and ask for stories. Stories of when Tom was a boy, stories of horses and storms and good harvests. Marina blossomed. The tension she carried in her shoulders slowly melted away. She began to smile more, to sing while she cooked, to look at Tom without fear of what was to come. She planted a herb garden in the backyard. She sewed new curtains for the living room. She transformed that house into something she'd never had before, a home. And Tom rediscovered what it meant to wake up with purpose, not just to work, but to work for someone. For someone. He taught Lucas how to care for the animals, how to fix fences, how to listen to the land. And on cold nights, when Marina lay beside him, he held her hand and silently thanked the God he had so often questioned. It was on a spring afternoon, 6 months after their wedding, that Marina noticed the changes in her own body. Morning sickness, fatigue, the missed period. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand on her still flat stomach, her heart racing. A child of Tom's, a child that carried no shame, only promise. When she told him that night, Tom was silent for a long moment. Then he took her face in his hands and kissed her forehead with such tenderness that Marina broke down in tears. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. Thank you for giving me this. Lucas, upon discovering he would be an older brother, ran through the house shouting with joy. I'll teach him everything. I'll show him how to catch frogs in the creek. I'll be the best brother in the world. Marina and Tom laughed. And for the first time, they laughed without fear. The town, little by little, began to accept. Some would never forgive, but others, those with less hardened hearts, started to greet Marina on the street. Mrs. Applegate visited every week, bringing cookies and advice. Father Anselmo blessed the house. Dr. Euclid made sure to monitor the pregnancy without charging. And on a cold autumn morning, Marina gave birth to a baby girl. Small, perfect, with her father's clear eyes and her mother's dark hair. They named her Clara, because after so much darkness, that's what she represented. Light. 2 years later, on a hot, sunny afternoon, Marina was on the porch sewing a new dress for Clara. Lucas was playing in the yard with a puppy Tom had brought from the fair. The baby was crawling on the living room floor, giggling in that delightful way only babies can. Tom came in from the fields, took off his hat, wiped his sweaty brow. Marina looked up and smiled. Tired? Always, but worth it. He sat beside her, pulled Clara onto his lap. The baby clung to her father, babbling things only she understood. Marina looked at the scene, Lucas playing, Clara giggling, Tom beside her, and felt a peace so profound it ached from its goodness. Tom? Thank you for staying, for not giving up. He looked at her, those deep-set eyes now shining with something Marina finally recognized. Love. Not the stormy, forbidden love she had known before, but the love that stays, that builds, that holds. I'm the one who thanks you, Marina. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to wake up again. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Lucas ran to the porch and asked if they could go fishing in the creek. Clara clapped her hands, wanting to go too. Tom laughed and agreed. We all will, the whole family. And they went, down the dirt road, under the golden afternoon sun. The four of them walked together. Lucas in front, running and laughing. Clara on her father's lap, pointing at butterflies. Marina beside Tom, hand in hand, her heart finally at peace. Behind them, the wooden house, once empty, now full of life, the garden growing, the curtains swaying in the window, smoke rising from the chimney. Home, not perfect, but theirs. And it was more than enough. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in their place? Comment and share with someone special.